Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential because when you keep growing, we all get stronger. And we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
All and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and earlier this week, I was training a client, and he started getting really nauseous. Started to squat down, feeling a little faint, and I'm concerned. And this has happened twice with this person. It happened the very first time we trained, and then we trained once a week for several weeks, took some time off to go on vacation, and then I was out of town, and we came back. We trained again, slow start, slow build, and again, started getting nauseous. And I've felt that before. I was a fitness manager at a gym, and the gym hadn't opened. So in order for me to get my workouts, I got a membership at another gym. So that guy who knew I was going to be the fitness manager at the rival gym was like, oh, I'll do the complimentary introductory session because I don't want you poaching my trainers, I'm assuming. And he gave me a workout, but I haven't worked out in a while. And he didn't give me a hard workout. All of a sudden, I started getting nauseous. I started feeling faint. And I'm sure he was like, who is this clown? He's going to be the fitness guy at the new location. And I just gave him a few simple exercises and he's getting nauseous. What's caused that? What causes this exercise-induced nausea? Why? Well, I went to the research and I found a good article in 2013 by Samborsky et al. And this is in the a gastrointestinal research study. And so it really goes into why like GI distress happens, and it says it's really common in athletes and exercisers. So the occurrence of GI disorders, it depends on your age, it depends on your sex, it depends on your training history, it depends on the physical activity and the physical performance that you're going into. But one of the things it points out is that endurance athletes like runners, particularly long distance runners and cyclists, long distance cycling, who participate in these strenuous, long-lasting exercises are the ones that see the highest incidence of occurrence. So according to the article, it says gastrointestinal complaints are usually divided into two groups according to the anatomical part of the GI tract which is affected. So there's the upper gastrointestinal tract and there are the lower gastrointestinal tract issues. So upper gastrointestinal tract includes nausea, vomiting, and gastroesophageal reflux. So you're getting a heartburn and you get some belching. The lower gastrointestinal tract symptoms are a little bit different. So, and they are reported more by the running group, while the other one seems to be a little bit more of the cycling group. And they see things like diarrhea, intestinal cramping, gastrointestinal bleeding, and flatulence. So why? What are some of the issues? The majority of these athletes tend to get used to these exercise-related GI symptoms, and they don't consider them related to diseases. And I think it is important to point out that if these persist, it is important to get checked out by medical professionals. I don't want you to just listen to this podcast and be like, Rick says, it's likely this, and then it is something completely different and it's medical related. So if things continue, y'all need to get checked out. Don't just be like, hey, I listened to a fitness podcast and they said it's this. So let's talk about some of the issues outside of medical issues that could potentially be the problem that you're experiencing. So the first one is Let's talk about gastric emptying. Delays in how long it takes once you have something to drink can lead to you feeling sick. So you either eat or you drink too much or too close to the time that you're training, and you don't actually empty out of the stomach. So there's maybe some sloshing around. And this one's interesting. The higher the intensity of the exercise, the longer it can take to empty. Now, also, the higher the intensity of exercise, the more you're potentially sweating, the hotter your body is. So being hydrated could be highly indicated. And yet, once you take the hydration in, you actually have a hard time getting it out of your stomach. And so that can actually make it really challenging. Now, low intensity exercise can actually facilitate how quickly gastric emptying occurs. So I think this is important to point out that you're doing higher intensity exercise, and that leads you to needing to have hydration, needing to be hydrated, but it makes it harder once you actually have it because things are sloshing around. So you have to actually give a little piecemeal, piecemeal, piecemeal. Well, the other thing too is that we find out that one of the issues is not so much the gastric emptying, which it can be, but the fact that being dehydrated is what can lead and be a frequent cause of exercise-induced nausea. Why am I getting sick to my stomach? Because you're actually not hydrated. You go in on an empty stomach early in the morning and you haven't actually hydrated. You maybe have had a coffee, but you haven't eaten and you haven't had any water or an electrolyte solution. That can lead to probably the highest incidence of nausea. So, when to hydrate? All right, are you trading one issue potentially for another, right? So now you're saying, hey, Rick, one of the issues is you're telling me I'm dehydrated, and the other issue is saying that I'm hydrating and it's still in my stomach and I can't empty it quick enough. So I think that those are two important things to make sure that you learn how to balance. So carbohydrate and electrolyte solutions tend to actually empty out of your stomach quicker than just water. And here's another thing. This is a quote from that article that I mentioned in the start: is high intensity exercise and emotional stress before sports and competitions induce a catecholamine stimulus, which suppresses thirst. All right. So now, problematically, I've got a response that is suppressing my thirst response, and yet I don't want to get nauseous by not actually hydrating, but I also want to be careful that I'm not hydrating and I don't empty that before I go into a tournament or a competition. So what do? You learn how it works for you. We know that you need to be hydrated, but you know that you need to hydrate long enough before competition or long enough before going into a workout that it actually gets out of the stomach and it goes through this gastric emptying. All right. Now, before we get any further in that, let's talk about another reason why potentially there is this feeling of nausea. And one of those things is called visceral ischemia, or it's a low blood flow to the gut. Physical activity increases cardiac output and contraction force. So those two things, my muscles are working, my heart is working, and increased blood flow to the working muscles and to the skin and to the areas around actually shunts blood away from the gut and moves it towards something else. So towards the working muscles. This is interesting. In the article, it states that the reduction of blood flow to central organs, such as intestines and liver, reaches almost 80% during exercise and 70% and at 70% intensity of VO2 max. So one of the researchers in a different article says that there's a decrease in splenic blood flow, which is just an area in the gut, and it's most strongly pronounced during the first 10 minutes of exercise. And the recovery of GI perfusion is most strongly marked during the first 10 minutes of rest. So by the time first 10 minutes of exercise is when most of the times this feeling of nausea happens. And during the first 10 minutes of rest is when we start to feel better. So there could be a correlation. Both gastric emptying delays as well as visceral ischemia are enhanced by what? What do you think? Dehydration. Dehydration. So again, this feeling of nausea can be in part because of age, in part because of gender and or sex, in part by your physical activity level. But it seems to be a lot caused by the amount of hydration you have. So nausea and vomiting are relatively frequent GI symptoms in athletes, especially those who are performing in endurance-based sports and disciplines. So in the majority of cases, they are particular physiological reactions to strenuous exercise, and it might be alleviated by proper hydration. However, there are cases that are persistent with nausea and vomiting, and they're caused by somatic diseases, which sometimes demand diagnostic and treatments that we are not equipped to deal with. So that's when we refer out. But ultimately, we're looking at hydration. And if we can hydrate, and that we will see that that's going to be beneficial to the majority of clients that we work with. If not, and it continues, refer them out. Now, there's a different feeling that happens sometimes that I mentioned in the beginning too, which is that feeling of dizziness. I'm feeling a little woozy, and sometimes that can happen because of low blood sugar, and that happens with me from time to time. So low blood sugar, and that's an easy solve, and I think that we should have a solution for that at every single gym, which is, do you have some kind of bar, some type of sugary candy, a little pouch that somebody can take so that their blood sugar goes back up? And that could be something that quickly alleviates the issue. One of the biggest issues, though, is quickly changing positions where somebody is lying down and they get back up and lying down. And that could be a blood pressure thing. Elevated intensity, or suddenly stopping after elevated intensity. And what that can do is that now the blood is pumping, and movement actually helps facilitate how quickly blood gets back to our heart. Venous return to the heart. Well, if my heart is pumping and then I stop moving and my movement doesn't help get blood back to the heart, that leaves me in a moment of lightheadedness, of dizziness, because our blood pressure drops and it creates dizziness. If there's more blood flowing to the extremities, less blood getting back, that can lead to dizziness. It also seems that, guess what can lead to dizziness? I know that you could probably figure it out at this point, but you are right. Dehydration can cause dizziness because of a decrease in blood volume. And so we need to be very aware of all of the things that are involved, but there are some things that we can really help to alleviate with that. Number one is make sure you hydrate. The Cleveland Clinic suggests hydrating, so you need to pre-hydrate, and that's a really cool topic. It's a really cool word that we can take with us and provide to our clients. Pre-hydrate, which is 30 minutes before you go to the gym. Pre-hydrate with about 8 ounces of fluid. Now that can be water, or it can be a sports drink if desired, but I don't think you need a sports drink unless you're doing incredibly high intensity work, and that work tends to last more than 1 hour, especially if you have weight loss clients. You don't need to say, hey, here's an electrolyte glucose solution that's going to be 150 calories, when all you really need is to have water. You don't need those calories. You don't need the electrolyte solution. Now, there are some that I use. Some are like tablet form, and the tablets are 15 calories, but it is an electrolyte solution. It's got a little bit of glucose. And for me, I like that because it also gives flavor. And so that could be something that you recommend for your clients. Also, during the workout, every 15 minutes of exercise, drink about 4 ounces of water, or that fluid that you're going to be taking in. So every 15 minutes, 4 ounces. Make sure you're encouraging them to go to the water fountain and get some water But also, one of the things they recommend, and it's something that we recommend too, is do a warm up and progressively increase intensity. I know some people that don't really do a very good progressive warm up. And so it's just kind of like, here's a little warm up and go. Kettlebell swings heavy and hard. And that could lead to somebody getting incredibly tired. It can lead to dizziness, that change of position in the head, that elevated intensity, and then the stop in elevated intensity when you take a break could lead to that feeling of dizziness. In addition to hydrate, make sure you cool down as well. And if the problems persist in nausea and dizziness, seek medical attention. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family and people who are nausea and get dizzy. And maybe this can help them out. So share that with your fitness friends and share it with your clients. It could be very beneficial to all involved. Make sure that if you can share this with people, also go in and leave a review. That's very helpful for me and for the podcast to help us get found by other people. We would appreciate that. If y'all want to reach out to me, you can hit me up. Hit me up on Instagram at dr.rickrichey or email me rick.richey@nasm.org. Thanks for listening. Keep inspiring people to fitness. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.